So the other day, Enola Holmes, the movie about the sister to Sherlock Holmes, dropped on Netflix, so here's my review. So kind of like getting started with this, I'm a pretty big fan of like the Sherlock brand in general. I think there's lots of good content out there. So how does this stack up among it? Yeah, I thought it was solid, it was good. Didn't blow me away, but I wasn't necessarily disappointed. But again, I didn't have the biggest expectations. But basically, just overall, I'd say it's solid. We gotta talk about the cast here because the cast is pretty great. You got Enola Holmes, played by Millie Bobby Brown, who I think I guess I also saw her in Godzilla King of the Monsters, but I don't know, I wasn't really impressed by her in that movie, but also the writing was not the best in that movie. But this one finally showed me, okay, she's great as 11, but she can actually play other characters too. She has range, and this character is very different from 11, so I think it shows that she does have range as an actress, and I hope to see her in more stuff going forward. And then I do like the character of Enola Holmes. It's very much a coming of age story, trying to find herself in this world where she fits in and stuff. So I think she's a pretty interesting character there. And then we got Sherlock Holmes, is played by none other than Henry Cavill. So you know what that means now? Now we got Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and now Superman, who have all played Sherlock Holmes. And Henry Cavill is just great as Sherlock Holmes in this. Of course, he's not really in a bunch of the movie, as he's not the main character. It is Enola Holmes. I think they used him really well and had him in the right amount of the movie, where you definitely get Sherlock Holmes, but it's not like he's the star of the movie and doesn't take away from Enola. And all the scenes are pretty great. And then also kind of what they do with Sherlock. As he's not the main character, he doesn't get the most development, but you kind of go in understanding this character. He's a character who doesn't really care about the outside world and people and stuff. He's more about these small little details and finding stuff, but he doesn't really care that much about all the worldly problems. So I kind of like how he has to deal with that and stuff. And then the rest of the cast was pretty great. You got Sam Claflin as the other Sherlock, or the other Holmes brother, who's very, very annoying, but he plays him very well. And then Helen Bowman Carter's in a bit of this. Of course, because she's kind of the main thing, she leaves from the beginning, which causes the main mystery. She's not in that much of it, but she's pretty good in all the scenes she is in. Yeah, and then I want to talk about the directing and editing, because I think this is one of the strongest suits of the movie. I really like the whole directing style. I thought it all looked really great. The cinematography and that sort of stuff were all good. And then the editing, I thought, had this very unique style of editing that I thought worked very well for this specific story. And it kind of has this tone of this high energy tone, which I think worked for it. And the directing and editing really showed that. So I like the whole tone of the movie, and kind of what it was going for this. I think that all really worked. But now we got to dive into the story, and the structure of the story, which is the part where I'm a tiny bit mixed on, because it's a little weird as a story. It sets up from the beginning that Enola is looking for her mother. That's the plot sets up from the beginning. Then they introduce something else kind of as a side plot, but then halfway through the movie, that side plot becomes the main plot, and the main plot, finding the mother, becomes the side plot. So right in that middle, when they're switching, it just feels a little off for a bit. But those actual plot lines, I think, are both pretty good. Especially, I think the finding the mother plot line actually worked really well, because it kind of builds up the characters of Enola really well, and also the mother plot, the mother as a character, because it makes this interesting struggle for Enola. She's do I go look for my mom, even though it's not she got kidnapped or lost, she went away on herself. Do I still look for her? Does she not care about me? And kind of like struggling with that. So I think that was handled well, but it's just kind of interesting how that kind of gets sidelined and then something else becomes the main plot and stuff. So it just feels a little weird. I do love mysteries, and while this wasn't like an amazing mystery, the mystery and twists and turns weren't like mind-blowing good. I thought it was good enough. And then there are some fun moments throughout the story, like a couple fun fight scenes and stuff. And then once you get to the payoff of like the plot lines, especially like the plot line I was talking about that starts as a side plot and then gets promoted to main plot. I don't want to dive too much into that because this is not a spoiler review. Once you get to the payoff of that, I think it could have been handled a lot better. But it could have been handled better, but it wasn't the worst. And I think it was a somewhat satisfying payoff, but not the biggest payoff. But the way they paid off the mother plotline, I thought worked a lot better. So overall, I think like the story and the structure of how it all came together worked well enough, but I actually wasn't blown away by it. And then when you get to the whole like thing they're trying to convey about the strong female characters and stuff, I think can work well enough. I'm glad that we're getting strong female characters in movies, but sometimes the way they show it can get a bit preachy at times, which I don't like when they do that. I prefer when they just show it naturally. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily a big issue there. But yeah, that's kind of basically my thoughts on it. I do hope this comes a franchise because there's a lot of places you can go for future and more future adventures. And I think if this does become a franchise, I think this will probably be, if it does a good job at being a franchise, this should hopefully be one of my least favorites, because this is kind of like one of those movies where you're like, oh, that's a good start for a franchise, but it hasn't actually met, like, you can tell there's a better peak in that the movie should get better. I feel like it's something like the first X-Men movie, or Spider-Man 2002, or like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. All those movies, I think, like, they set up the world and the tone in certain aspects really well, but then there's still plenty of place for improvement. I think that's kind of like where it is, and I think all of those examples I mentioned were able to get better, with their sequel or sequels. So I think that's kind of what we need. If this ends up being like the best of the series, then that will not really be a great franchise, but I'm hoping that they'll be able to improve on the stuff that didn't necessarily work, but keep the stuff that did work. But yeah, maybe we could also get Just a Sherlock spin-off. I would be fine with that. Overall thoughts, I guess I thought it was pretty solid, pretty good, not amazing, but I still enjoyed myself throughout the movie and had enough good elements to keep it where it's good, but not to the point where it's really good. So I know I said like last time I'm not really going to score movies, but I think I kind of have a good score for this movie. So I think I'd go like a 6.8 or 6.9 out of 10, like right below that 7 out of 10. But normally I think like the 6 out of 10 for me is kind of like that okay, it works well enough. And then 7 is where it's like, 7 is where it's like, it's good, it's solid. So I think it's like right at it, it's good, it's solid, just a tiny bit below. Comment down below, have you seen Enola Holmes? If so, what did you think about it? Please like and subscribe and keep watching Neek.